So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second in a series of the Pixies podcast. I still haven't really thought of a name for it yet, but you will see that we have Pixie royalty, really, from the group. I think he's a very special man to all of us. He's always coming up with funny posts and things like that. And to some members of the group, I think he's a little bit of eye candy as well. He is, of course, Mr. Adam Henry Short. Adam, how are you?
Well, very well, thank you. What an introduction! And
I could have gone on for a lot. Could have gone on for a lot
I see
longer
myself
than
as a lot more low key than that.
Not at all. Not at all. So, how are you keeping? Are you well?
I'm good. Yeah, I had I don't know if the group can remember, but last year when I had a year off, I finished work and took a year off with my daughter, and so I was a man of leisure for quite a while. Although, I mustn't say that because I was busy looking after her, and I did courses and studied counselling in that time. But now I'm working again and still studying, and life's a lot busier. So in some ways it helped with the lockdown because I'd already been through that the year previously, been locked down.
Yeah. You acquitted yourself to it well.
Yeah. I think when you're sat around and you're thinking about the future and what you might do, and you're not active, that's a more anxious feeling for me.
Yeah.
So when the COVID came, there's actually something real to worry about. And actually, when there's something real to worry about, I felt more relaxed. I know that's not the same for everybody, but it was more tangible than what does the future hold. So for me, not so bad. And plus, it coincided with me starting work.
Yeah.
So I was busier than ever, and it was very routine stuff. So yeah, I was leading a simple life, but busy, and I guess that kept me healthy mentally.
Yeah, good. Now, I messaged you about half an hour ago because my lovely wife, Jordan, who you know, she took me out for lunch earlier on today, which was a bit of a spontaneous thing to do. And so I messaged you, I said, we'll be here about another 45 minutes. And you said, just got back having a soup. So I've got to ask you what type of soup you had.
It was a chili soup. So that was a real treat.
What, vegetarian chili, or did it have some meat in it as well?
No, it's vegetarian. Okay. I'm actually trying to be a bit good this week, actually, and this month. I don't know whether it's my age. I hit the sort of mid-40s, and I just...
cry me a river.
Well, no, I'm still going to say it. You'd be damned. When you're inactive and you're hanging around for a year, and you start to think like I need to be doing more, and that was making me feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, I haven't sort of joined CrossFit or really started hammering the body, but I was just, part of my job is to be out and about. So I was doing a lot of walking and just trying to eat properly.
So a nice chili
as far
soup
as
for
health
lunch.
kick goes.
Right. Did you have a crusty cob on the side as well? Or?
No, and I would have. The old me would have had that. And maybe
you've kicked the crusty cobs.
Yeah. You just can't keep doing that to your body.
No, I know you can't. No.
On the side.
There has to be a limit on the crusty cobs, definitely.
Yeah.
As tasty as they can be.
So it won't be permanent, but certainly just to make me feel better about myself, and just
Sure. Well, you're looking a fine specimen of a man, as you always do, anyway. So which is good to see. It's good to see you smiling and happy. It's great. So obviously part of the reason we're here is to talk about music, primarily Pixies. You and I have been to 2 Pixies gigs together. Yeah, I think Plymouth and Birmingham. True. Yeah. But we met before that, didn't we? About, I don't know, is it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Might be 3 years ago now. Because you live near to where I used to live. So we arranged to meet in an old stomping ground of mine, the Hunters Hall at Tetbury, and you actually live just near Tetbury, don't you? It's all right, I won't give away your address. I'll put that in the details at the bottom.
Well, I've not always lived in Tetbury. I most of my life I lived in Bristol, hence the accent.
So about 20 miles away from where you are now.
Yeah, so Bristol's a big city, and I've talked about it in the group a lot. I love Bristol, but actually, there comes a time when you need to move away, and I guess I did that when I went to sort of different countries for longer periods or to uni. But part of that was I never quite went back, so I kind of left it in about 2001, something like that. And I just like the pace more here. It's because Bristol is always on the move, but really close to my heart. But you start to think, where do I want to be, and where do I want my children to see out their time? And whilst Bristol was good for me, it just gets busier.
Well, you certainly live in a beautiful part of the country. Gloucestershire is lovely.
I love it, and I think I'm in my forever home, but it is certainly not at that stage yet. It really is a fixer-upper. It's like Tom Hanks in The Money Pit.
Yeah.
But that's quite good for me as well, because I've come from I've done that growing up with my mother and sister in a fixer-upper, so I know what the deal is.
Yeah.
And I think my first house was the new build, which was great for the time, but soulless. So moving here is just, it's got a lot of things it needs to have done to it, but very happy here. And, it's nice to have some roots and think I'm going to be here a while.
And you're quite close to John Cole as well, aren't you? both as a friend and also geographically. How's that working for you?
Well, you can be too close, really, can't you? And the irony is, when I went to my first Pixies gig, I was living in Cheltenham, and I was literally a stone's throw from John Cole.
Right.
And I mean stone.
Right. Okay.
And that's really funny, because I heard Pixie talking about the Brixham gig. So it was the same gig for me. And that was my first Pixies gig.
Oh, the Brixton, not Brixham.
Brixton.
Oh, sorry.
Brixham,
no, because John likes to hang out in Brixham, doesn't he?
Yeah, Brixham's another thing altogether. That's kind of John's stomping ground, and that's a different story, maybe not for the podcast, but
maybe not.
Brixton was great, and I've certainly posted about that on the group. But I'd been talking to a parent at the school. I was a teacher in North Leach, and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Because I know you're a big fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was talking to this parent about the Pixies, and we all know what it's like. You're just glad somebody knows them. Secretly, you want everyone to know them, but there's another part of you that doesn't want them to be a big thing. There's a bit of a paradox there for me.
Yeah.
So she remembered this conversation, because about a few years later, and she certainly wasn't at the school at the time, I was driving back from some course, and I thought, I'll stop in Cirencester, because I'm kind of new to the area, and I'll have a coffee, blow it, live a little.
Absolutely.
Stop. Yeah.
It's like your chili soup.
Yeah, I'm
living
I
on
live
the
on
edge.
The edge a little bit, yeah. So I stopped for the coffee, and I see this woman and all her children sort of banging on the windows, like, Mr. Short. And I thought, oh, it's them. She said, this is really weird, but I've just posted a birthday card to a friend, and in it, there's a Pixies ticket. Wait here with the children. And off she ran. She left me with the children, came back with the card, opened it, and I thought, poor bugger. And gave me the ticket. And I don't know, it's the kind of serendipity of it. It was the best way to go to a Pixies gig for me, because there was nothing stopping me from booking one up, but I never did. And who knows? I mean, I never did this with Bowie, and I regret that to this day. But it's a bit like it's a bit like that show Lost, where Desmond's living in the bunker and I think he's got a Charles Dickens book, and it's kind of the last one he hasn't read, and he's kind of holding on to it. I don't know what the reasons for holding on to it are really, but I guess I was kind of holding on because I'd read about the Pixies in that little pamphlet that came with Death to the Pixies, and that was about as close as I got to them, and I knew they'd reformed,
right,
but hadn't committed to go and see them. So I don't know what, I don't know what forces were working that day, but it turned out great.
Yeah, and obviously it's had a big influence on your life musically, but also you've met a new group of friends as well, which is one of the great things about the group.
I was excited to receive that ticket, and then I had like a really middle-aged reaction. It's like, oh God, that's a long way to drive. I've got a massive day that day, so I'm going to have to kind of take clothes in the car, change in the services.
Yeah.
And I even threw like a duvet in the back of the car, and yeah, I looked at trains. It was never going to happen on trains. So I drove there, managed to park, really paranoid about parking in Brixton, expecting to be clamped, but I just wanted to be at the gig, and I bought a pint, got to the front, and you're absorbing everything in that moment because it's special. And I can still remember the people who stood around me. In fact, some of them are in the Pixies group, not the Friends group, but the Pixies group. And I've seen them and I recognize them, and I think, wow, and it's possible Pixie White was there too. It would be interesting to see how many people I do know were there.
Yeah.
But it was a great gig. I was near the front and in the moshy bit, and was absolutely shattered and sweaty when I came out and hit the cold air. And then the drive back was, I drove. It was late, and I thought, I know I'm tired, but I can drive sensibly. And I got to the services. I thought, right, I'm gonna have a sleep here. And I did. So I sort of pulled up in a really discreet part of the car park. And you're wondering what's coming here now, aren't you, Andrew? Because you do like a car park story.
Mine are always really boring. This is tantalising.
Yeah. And so I put the seats down, got a pillow, duvet, and just kind of wrapped it around me and thought, I'll sleep for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Anyway, about 30 minutes later, there's these...
Or I won't wake up at all.
There were two Subarus came kind of parked either side of me.
Right.
And were sort of blaring whatever it was Subaru drivers like to listen to. And I had like a very English reaction. I thought, like, it's going to be very awkward to kind of sit up in the middle of this and move on. So do I just pretend it's not happening and try to sleep, or do I... Anyway,
it sounds more like a story for John Cole than for you, but anyway, carry on.
Well, I thought I just can't sleep. I'd had enough of a power nap to be going on my way, but I sort of came up like Dracula from the reclined seats and sort of started the engine, and people looking at me, and off I went. But and do you know what? The next day, because I think when you're a teacher, you tend to live like a monk, and you always think, oh, better not, because the next day will be harder. And the next day, I was buzzing because I'd been to see the greatest band in the world and had a great time, and it was free, except for the kind of London traffic police. I think they'd kindly taken a picture of me on the way to the gig because I crept into some grid. Yeah. And even that didn't spoil the fun. I just thought, oh well, they still won't be able to wipe the smile off my face.
Brilliant. So that leads me to my first question. I put links at the bottom. Yesterday I had hoped that I was going to be able to actually embed the videos into the podcast, but one, that was way beyond my technical abilities, and two, also thankfully Jordan pointed out to me that I'd probably be breaching copyright as well. So what I'm going to be doing is just putting links to the tracks that you choose at the bottom of the post for this. So first question, really tough, I know. Favorite Pixies track? If you had to pick one.
It is tough, and it always changes, but I know I've mentioned this track a few times, and I'm going to stick with it because there's something about it. really potted history. I was making a mix. I was just making a cassette of heavy tracks, guitar based, and it was the usual stuff like Radiohead, Smashing Pumpkins, and my friend lent me a cassette of Doolittle, and I guess it, for a lot of us, it starts with a similar kind of story. It was interesting to listen to yesterday's about, just having the right person on the till in HMV recommending the band. But he said, "Oh, try this." My friend gave it to me. He owed me some money. He didn't have the money, so he gave me Doolittle.
Wow.
I think, wow, okay. How much did he owe you? Because that's a hell of an album. I put it in and I immediately liked Debaser. And because it was a cassette, I put it into the car and it was flipping. And this thing was just flipping over and over because it's a quick album.
Yeah.
And I just loved it immediately. And I've never had that feeling before where I just thought, because I would hang around HMV and flick through albums that I'd heard were good and try new stuff. And I'm quite happy to do that. But I just went straight out and bought the lot, all of it. And I remember going back with like a stack and putting them into the CD player and, Bossa Nova, just thinking, oh yeah, just the first few seconds, oh yeah, I know I'm gonna like this, and that one's great too. And and I went through all the albums like that. It was silly in a way because I didn't listen to them properly, but it was getting that drop of dopamine and thinking like, this is great.
Yeah.
This, they cannot be stopped. Every song.
So
is fantastic.
What year was this then?
Doolittle.
Okay, brilliant. So a track off Doolittle then, to narrow it down.
I think
Don't say Silver. Don't say Silver.
Well, I am one of those people that says, Doolittle would be flawless for me. Like everything is amazing, except for Silver, which I find good.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's not damning praise. I mean, it's still a good track.
I'm completely with you.
I tried to listen to that track and learn to love it more. And I think I'm there now. So
it's one of those sort of tracks I don't really like it as a track, but if I heard it on the radio in isolation, or if I was in a shop or something like that and I heard it, I would think, wow, what a brilliant song. Amazing to hear something like that on the radio.
If someone was blazing it out, it reminds me of when we met in Manchester for an happening and somebody played, not somebody, Pixies played a Teenager of the Year track on the dance floor, and it sounds different, and it was great.
Yeah,
being heard that way. You're used to it in the car or at home, and so I do like all of that album, and that, but it's rather like the Benz and OK Computer for me, because there's a lot of other tracks which I think maybe get higher. But for the consistency of the album, it's Doolittle as the Benz for me. But there is an OK Computer in this to Bossa Nova and Tromplemon for me. But I have not been disappointed with the new stuff.
So anyway, are you going to go for a favourite track off Doolittle?
Yeah, it's going to be I Bleed, because there's a moment towards the end of that song. I think it's about 1:30 in, because I like that moment. And it's where Kim starts singing about like there's a place.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. I just love it. And actually the idea behind I Bleed of kind of like hemorrhaging and giving, I don't know what it's about, like giving over to a job or giving over to something, but like giving part of yourself. There's something about that track that really resonates with me. And certainly I understand that feeling, and music is a good way of expressing a feeling without words. So it's definitely I Bleed.
Brilliant, excellent. That's a great choice, and I'm certainly with you on your feelings about Doolittle. It is pretty much a flawless album. So
the art is incredible too.
Okay, so I was a little bit cheeky yesterday, and I sent a message to some of the other members of the group. I'm not going to name who they are, but I asked them to come up with some suggested questions for you.
Oh,
and when I read them out, you'll probably start to guess who might have asked them. So here goes. This is not my question, okay, remember?
Mm-hmm.
You're having one of those awful dreams where suddenly you've been put on a stage naked in front of a huge crowd and they're all waiting for you to sing a song. Which Pixies song are you going to sing? Brackets. I'm hoping it's not just me who has these dreams. I don't know if you're in those dreams, hasten to add.
That sounds like something Dean would say.
No, wrong sex actually, mates. Anyway, so there you are. Suddenly you find yourself naked on a stage and you've got to sing a Pixies tune. Is it I Bleed or do you go for something else? You probably go for the quickest one,
I think if you're
I'd
naked
imagine.
and you're uncomfortable, you go for a quick one. So maybe Whatever Happened to Pong.
Brilliant. Okay. Okay. What else did they say? I've kind of touched on this one. Ask him how hard it is to keep up with John Cole. And then
Was the drinking or the walking?
Just everything and looking after him, I think. Or does he look after you? I sense it's probably you look after him more than he looks after you.
Bit of both, to be honest. Because and that's what I love about the group, actually, because I probably do keep an eye on him because he can wander off and stuff, but certainly when John invited me down to Brixham and I hadn't had a holiday for a while then, and that's part of it for like going to the happening in Vegas. I would have loved to have done it, but my own children haven't been away for ages because of me chopping careers around.
Sure.
So yeah, John invited me down and and has subbed me a few drinks and stuff, and he drove me to Adele's wedding too, and it's been the same with other people in the group. So I think I met Phil Husband first. He sells the ferry across the Isle of Wight, and
as you said earlier, your mum's over there.
Yeah, so and he let my son kind of sail out of Yarmouth, which was lovely. So I met Phil first, and then I met John in a pub in Cheltenham just to check that he was okay.
John in a pub? Surely not.
Yeah. And then after that, I think I met you and Jordan for a meal.
Yep, that's right.
And
there you were in your English country gentleman finery, I remember. Not quite, but you had the sort of tweed jacket on, didn't you?
So. Yeah, I don't wear the red jeans or anything, but the tweed jacket is nothing to do with being in Tetbury. I've always worn a blazer for a coat.
Oh, have you?
I just don't like wearing a coat. No, I don't know why. Yeah. I didn't come from that kind of school or anything. Anyway, what was the question?
Don't know. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
It's about looking after John.
Oh, well, I can keep up with him walking wise, not drinking wise.
And, no, I quickly realised that wasn't a good way to go.
No, it's lovely to meet people, and I've never been disappointed, and I hope people aren't disappointed when they meet me, because whilst I appreciate the privateness of being on the friends group, that is me, and I wouldn't post anything that I wouldn't be prepared to say, which makes it sound like I post like contentious things. I don't, and that's kind of who I am, I guess.
You're one of those terrible trolls, aren't you, on the social media otherwise?
Yeah, passive aggressive. No, I just don't like conflict, and I'd rather not. But I'm not afraid of it. But I would rather not live like that. If
you can avoid it, you will.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get angry on Facebook and things like that, as people will know from some of my posts. But even I start getting bored of myself eventually, so I shut up.
But do you know what? I read them all. I read your posts, and I read Lisa Simpson's posts, and I read Paul McGuire's posts, and I absorb it all.
Yeah.
But my take on it is there is an awful lot of tribalism, and I definitely have my side, and I'm very clear about it, and I don't mind saying that, like, this country is a bit of a shit shower at the moment, and I wish it wasn't. But I don't want that to kind of affect me and
who
how
you
I go
are.
about
Yeah,
things.
sure.
But it's very easy to say that, because actually, you know, it does come to get you when you're the next group on the list of vulnerable people. So
indeed,
I take it seriously, but I also don't want to be constantly consuming that stuff. Twitter is terrible for it.
Yeah, I am still on Twitter, but I've unfollowed an awful lot of people because they were just winding me up and making me quite miserable and angry. So anyway, let's get back to some happier things to talk about. Another question from one of the members of the group was, best moments with the Friends of Pixies group.
Well, I'm glad that's a difficult question, because that sums it up really. Loads. I remember some online moments where, you know, we were just very jealous but happy for the people who were going to the happening.
Yeah.
I think for actual meetings, the individual meetings have been lovely, and I like to meet people individually. But the happening we had in Manchester was great, and actually, because of the distances involved, which aren't great when you're from the States, but they're significant in the UK. The Manchester meeting was great because I got to meet Helen and Joe and Jules, you know, people that I'm close to that are at the other end of the country.
Yeah.
Whereas like down here, I know I'll meet Julian again. I know I'll meet Phil. I know I'll see the other Phil that you know, because we went. That's another. You know, Phil drove me all the way to Brixham and back again.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then I drove Phil and John all the way up to Manchester, and that's just the way the group is.
Well, and you drove me to Birmingham as well, didn't you?
Yeah, and you drove me.
Very strangely, you met me at GCHQ, which I don't know if that's a double life of yours, whether you just knocked off for the day or not. But
they just said,
for those who don't know what GCHQ is, it's the what was it? The government surveillance headquarters. It's basically the sort of centre of spying within the UK.
Yeah, like the Pentagon.
And a bit like the Pentagon. So when Adam and I went to see the Pixies in Birmingham, he decided he was going to pick me up from GCHQ, which I thought was a bit odd. But anyway, there we go. I'm sure there's nothing secretive behind it.
They just said it's the best way to track you, like to get you close, get you out of Devon because there's no signal there.
Yeah, you knew the signal would be good at GCHQ.
I mean, what a week. I wasn't getting into Adele territory of seeing everything or Shane.
Yeah.
However, like that was a great week for me because I just started to have a little bit of money again, and blew it all on the Pixies.
But they're a worse thing to spend it on.
The family understand. I mean, the Plymouth gig was wonderful because we got to meet the
guys over from America, Steely's, and that came over, didn't they, from America?
Yeah,
and
it's
Michelle
lovely to meet the American family.
Yeah,
and James and Kelly, I'd met them in Manchester previously, so that was like
okay.
To be just reunited. But you know, lots of people were there. So that first Plymouth gig was really great, and if that was the only one I went to, that was wonderful enough. I mean, it's flawless.
It was a great gig. It was a great gig,
and we had a get together, and that was great.
Yeah,
and that's the weekend I stayed with you. But then, because we got to do Birmingham.
Yeah. So when you stayed with us, you introduced. I'm just going to go off on a bit of a tangent, and then we'll come back to Pixies again. You introduced Jordan and I to a TV program which is called This Country, which is actually based around near where you live, and it's become a bit of a cult program, hasn't it? Do you want to just talk a little bit about it? And I'll put a link again at the bottom of this, so as people who haven't heard of This Country, they can absorb themselves into it.
Well, it's the mockumentary genre. So if you like things like Spinal Tap or The Office, Best in Show, that sort of stuff, which I do like. It's the same as that, but they've picked a place in the Cotswolds, and it happened to be the town, and it has to be called a town. You don't call it a village, because it's got a royal charter. But it was a town where I was working. I worked there for 10 years. And I think my car's in one scene, and I've certainly been detoured with my students and things when they're filming, because they the film crew get their elbows out a bit and imagine that they're taking over. But I find it really funny. And, when they're talking, the bit where Kerry is talking about she's got enemies in these villages, and she kind of rattles off.
So it's two cousins. It's two cousins, isn't it? They're actually brother and sister.
Two cousins. And she's saying, I can't go out because I've got so many enemies around. And she rattles off these names of places nearby, and they're the most quaint villages ever. And she's living in the Cotswolds, which is kind of a delightful place anyway, and kind of trying to big herself up as a gangster. I just find it really funny. And then, of course, I think at the end of that episode, she gets her house gets a plumbing, which is like a drive-by, only there's no driving and no bullets. It's just plums. Her house is covered in plums. And it's really funny. And I think you'd started watching it when I stayed with you, and it was nice to relive.
It was you that told us about it. And I think Jordan had heard about it, but then we watched episode after episode, binge watched. That's the expression, isn't it? We binge watched it. And and then the last series was out within the last sort of 6 months, wasn't it? As well. So it's a shame it's come to an end, but probably good that it's got out on a high. So is that what life is like in Gloucestershire then?
I'm sure for some people it is.
Your house has never been plumbed then?
I've never been plumbed, but I keep my head down. Or actually, people know. People, when they see me, they think, don't mess with that guy.
Don't mess with him. Yeah, don't plumb him.
When they see me go past with the children's car seats and the blazer.
Don't mess with Mr. Short.
They just know. I might wind the window down and leave a little gang sign out the side of the door, and they know.
They know. So anyway, bringing you back to Pixies and moving on to so what year was it roughly that you got into them? Sounds like a similar sort of time to Pixie? Yes, they ran 2003, 2004, something like that.
No, 1997. I was into them.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I collected all the albums. It was easy to do a mix then because there was only 4 or 5 albums, and I listened to it, and then I left the country, and I didn't take all my CDs with me. But whilst I was away,
because you were in China, weren't you, for a while? Is that right?
Yeah, for 2 years. So it's like 2 years without your music. But weirdly, I found a place that had lots of knockoff CDs and DVDs and things, so I could keep up to date with some stuff. But for some reason, this guy who was selling CDs, he had a lot of 4AD stuff. Never the Pixies, but other stuff like Belly. And I would always sort of pick. I figured that whatever I picked up, he would double the price. So I would pick up some real rubbish. I'd be picking up Bon Jovi and stuff, which a lot of my Chinese students liked.
Yeah.
And then I'd have like the 4AD one over here. And I was like, how much for this? Living on a prayer. Like extortionate. Is that? Oh, what about this one as well?
So they threw the Cocktail Twins in for you, or this Mortal Call. I think they were on 4AD
got some good stuff then.
Yeah.
But the weird thing was, we went on a bit of a coach journey once to the big centre of Hunan, which is where I was living, and in Changsha there was a supermarket, a French supermarket. I mean, this was unheard of because this was before the Olympics, so it was hard to have a cash point. It was still a developing country. And there's a Carrefour French supermarket, so you could get a baguette and some cheese.
Or a crusty cob.
Yeah, a crusty cob. And, what a life. So I was living it up a bit too much even back then, but paying for it now. So initially it was nice to go and get some bread and cheese.
Yeah.
But then and you won't believe this, but like they had some cassettes there, and one of them was Dog in the Sand.
Wow. Okay.
But I mean, it was a good amount of my salary.
Right,
I was earning. I took the basic £180 a month.
Okay.
When I worked in China.
Yeah.
in the first year, certainly. So I I can entertain that kind of money for.
Well, you're skipping ahead anyway, because I'm going to come on to Catholics later on. So,
I had the CD at home anyway, but that was 2 years away, and I thought, well, whilst I'm away, Frank's probably written another 10 albums, so I can wait.
That's a lovely segue, because I just want to start now talking about his solo career, and I'm going to ask you to choose a favourite of his solo career. I think, as I was saying yesterday, I bought the first 2 albums, and then Cult of Ray I couldn't just get on with, and sort of drifted away then. And it's great when Pixies reformed, never really got into the Catholics either, and that's something that I need to address over the next few weeks, I think, definitely. So a favourite Frank Black solo career track?
It's really hard to choose, because I think Teenager and
the first one's just eponymous, isn't it, Frank Black?
And, Teenager's good. The eponymous one is amazing, and I bought those on holiday in the States, and Cult of Ray, and I thought, well, okay, this does sound like the Pixies. Like, this is, we haven't lost too much here, but we gained some things as well. So I was enjoying them. But like the Gold Catholics album, was the same. Like there was a change in direction, and I could feel that in Teenager. So on the solo albums, I'd have to, because I knew you'd ask this. So I think Abstract Plane and I Could Stay Here Forever.
Yeah,
they're really good. But I think the one that made me feel like this is still a Pixies thing was 10%er. It still sounded similar to what I loved, and I can appreciate the changes now. But at that time, I just wanted to see that there was something still Pixie-ish about it. So I'm going to go for 10%er as an individual track.
Cool.
As a solo album.
That's a good choice. I wouldn't have predicted that one, so I'll make a note of that. I'm going to go back
to I wouldn't have predicted it either.
Going to go back to one of the random questions again. If Adam could only go to dinner with one Pixie member, past or present, who would it be and why?
Well, the sneaky answer is someone from the band, because they've been in the group.
Yeah, I think that's what they meant. I think Pixie member, I think they meant of the band, yeah.
Okay. I think...
I mean, obviously, if it's from the group, it'd be John Cole, wouldn't it? You'd go for him.
Yeah. Fish and chips every time.
Yeah. And then a
I think Dave would be interesting. He's obviously got a lot of interest, and I'm a bit like that. So, if when they say like a camel was a horse designed by committee, like if you were putting together things I like archaeology, rock music, strange stories on the bike, like what a strange mix. But I think Dave's probably a bit like that. He's got lots of interest, so he would entertain me, and I think Joey's probably just really cool to hang out with, and I think Paz has probably got some great stories too, because she's had an interesting life. But it has to be Frank, purely because I think he would listen to you as well.
Yeah,
because he's interested in people's stories. Otherwise, how could you write such interesting songs? But I think you could also learn a lot from him, and so I'm almost, from a point of view of listening, I would enjoy listening to him, but I also think he would listen back. So I'm going to go for Charles.
Okay, good choice. Okay, what's the next question? Ask him which Bristol band should cover which Pixies, can't speak. Ask him which Bristol band should cover which Pixies song, or vice versa. Someone you'll go for the Wurzels.
Well, funny enough, you know, when in the podcast when Dusty's always saying "old black dawning" and
yeah.
you know, singing in a country style, you know, the Wurzels could do a good job of that.
Which song do you think they could do a good rendition of?
"Old Black Dawning."
Yeah, or "I Bleed."
Yeah.
I'm tempted to do my thick Devonian accent now and try and do "I Bleed," but I'm not going to. So
yeah, stupid me. Something. Seriously, there's some good Bristol bands, but I'd be really interested to see what Massive Attack could do with it, actually.
Good shout.
And I'm gonna, you know, I know there's some obvious answers there with Idols and some of the early stuff, but I'm gonna go Massive Attack and something from Indie Cindy, maybe Bag Boy. Just I think that would be because Bag Boy feels more experimental anyway, and I think Massive Attack would do something really cool with that. But anything sung by Paz or Kim would go well with Massive Attack as well.
That's a great answer.
They tend to use great female vocalists.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously, you know, female vocalists and the role that they play in Pixies has been sort of fundamental, hasn't it, to their success. So I think, you know, when I was talking to Pixie yesterday, we agreed that Pixies wouldn't be Pixies without Kim Deal. And although, you know, she's gone and been replaced a couple of times, and now we've all taken Paz to our hearts, you know, that role really is fundamental to the sound, not just musically, but also sort of vocally.
Yeah, and when I was listening to that yesterday, I immediately thought, well, who could leave the Pixies that would make a difference for me? And it, you know, as much as I value the contribution of all of the members, you can't have the Pixies without Frank.
No.
I wouldn't want to see it without Joey either, and that's not to be dismissive of what Dave does, but you know, that was the thought that came from listening to you both speak about that, because you know, we see it in some other bands where people come and go, but you know, for me, even though there has been a replacement, the essence is still there. In fact, you know, it's given them legs, it's given them like a future. And as Kimball's said before, you know, she chose to leave.
Yeah.
And I love Kim Deal, but she did choose to leave, and that's fine, and that suits her. And I've seen the Breeders and enjoyed them. But
yeah, and she's had her own success in that as well.
What a find Paz has been.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I've only ever seen them with Paz because of the Brixton gig.
Yeah. Okay. So how many times have you seen them in total then?
So I saw them on my own at Brixton.
Yeah.
And then I saw them at the Roundhouse for that amazing,
of course, yeah,
anniversary tour.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw them at Plymouth with you, and then Birmingham with you. And then I was really fortunate that Russell reached out to the group offering a ticket, and I sort of had to say to the family, oh, you know, that week of Pixies I've had, well, I say week, 2 days.
Yeah.
It took up like a week's worth of planning and childcare and all sorts. Someone's offered another ticket, and you know, it's in London.
I'd really like to go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that was great. And you know, Russell is very kind, and that sums up the group. And you know, people look after each other, and I would do the same.
Absolutely, I can vouch for that. Having spent time with you as well, you're a top bloke, and you've always got people's back in that as well. So you're always there to help and support people in the group. I know that. So.
Yeah, well, I guess that's why, you know, when David from the Friends says about, you know, there are real friendships in this group, it's true, and I can see why sometimes we kind of dismiss things. Like yesterday when Pixie's talking about sort of playing Scrabble and meeting someone via Facebook, we do dismiss it, but actually you're connecting on a pure level, and providing people are honest.
Yeah.
And we know that that's an issue.
And I guess that was the sort of inspiration for me for doing these.
Sorry?
Yeah. So I think that was probably the inspiration for me for doing these chats and that as well, really, to spend a bit of time with people whilst we can't be physically together, a lot of us. And that was just a chance for us all to get to know each other a little bit better, all, dare I say, all over the world.
Yeah.
Terrible pun.
Segue coming.
No segue. I'm not that clever. But no, you're absolutely right. It's a great group.
And it's very strange to meet a stranger who you absolutely know, because we haven't met, but you meet someone, and I'm reminded when I met Joe, because I'd gone to the toilet, come upstairs, and suddenly like everyone's arrived, and there's Joe with a big hug, and it's lovely, and especially like when people have made the effort to come across the Atlantic to see you, and you meet them, and what a great thing. You're traveling in another country, and that's amazing enough.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to meet some people that you care about and have a good time, and maybe even see your favorite band. Well,
I know. It doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, it doesn't. And if one thing's come out of lockdown, is people be able to evaluate, what does matter. And I think, I'm pretty sure Jen wrote the other day about like the power of seeing some music live. And it's true, some of those things are making the difference.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on now to Frank Black and the Catholics and his work. And you've already touched on Dog in the Sand. So are you able to pick a favourite track from that era of his work?
Yeah. I mean, the Catholics albums are quite different for me. And there's some that I don't know as well. I've got them and I've listened to them. But earlier on, it sounded more country to me. And I'm not being dismissive of country, but it had that sound. But, by the time they get to Dog in the Sand, the band sounds so tight to me. And I'm not, the irony of all this is I'm not like massively into music as I am film. But even my ears can hear that Dog in the Sand is a really nicely produced album, and everybody knows each other. So I'd have to choose a track from that because there's so many good ones. But The Swimmer, it has some great lines, and I don't always, sometimes I'm really interested in the meaning of the songs, and other times not. So when they sing about in the wake of his chariot, he swam towards the latitudes.
Yeah.
I've already made up my own story about that, and I'm going back to kind of Doolittle, Frank Black, and thinking of,
I think you said something similar about Las Surfers Muertos as well, didn't you? Of Beneath the Eyrie as well. I think you said that you really felt sort of a connection with that song as well.
It's possible. I mean, that sounds like something I'd say because I'm touchy-feely about stuff like that, but. The chariot, and I was just imagining something like biblical coming down on like the Pharaoh's chariot, and it's not really a song about that at all. But that's the great thing about those songs.
Yeah, they are. A lot of them are sort of quite cinematic, aren't they? You can imagine. Well, a lot of them have been used in films.
That one is, and Bullet as well. But like a father and a son and a gun, and that feels very Johnny Cash to me in a way. But we know that Frank is.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with Johnny Cash.
No, I love him, and and Frank. If you watched it, is it the Adam and Joe show? They actually interview.
Yes.
Frank Black.
Yeah.
And he will throw out these references here, like Eddie Grant, like trying to sing a song in the style of Eddie Grant.
Yeah.
So, I like that about him. He's eclectic, and in the truest sense of the word Catholic, actually like a real collection of different things. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So did you actually pick a track in the end? I can't remember.
Yeah, I picked two, actually. I stuck with the swimmer, but I nodded to Bullet.
So you're going to go for Bullet or the swimmer? Which one is it?
The swimmer, definitely.
The swimmer. Right. Okay.
That's a lovely. Good set. I bleed. Swimmer.
10%.
10%.
Happy with that?
Well, it'll change tomorrow.
Well, I'll come back tomorrow then and ask you tomorrow.
Maybe not I bleed. But...
right. Well, I've run out of questions from my faithful friends who I asked, and I know you've got other things to be doing with your time. So I think you've got to go and do the school run and things like that now, haven't you? So.
Yeah. I'm on a really tight schedule these days. I can tell
you're always an anxious sort of.
Some Sundays off. That's about it now. What have I done?
Always worrying what you got to be doing.
Well, it's lovely to be working and paying attention to your children, but also like to study as well. So it's only going to be for 2 years, but it's going to be a busy 2 years. Yeah. But I'll make time for happenings and Pixies and.
Yeah, when this world sorts itself out, finally, whenever that will be.
I'll be waiting for that. I'll be ready.
I think we all are. All are, definitely. Mate, it's been great to see you again. And I look forward to sharing a pint and hopefully a gig with you again in the not too distant future.
Of course.
And thank you very much for your time. All the best to you. Cheers, buddy.